um, there's a different I've been using straight up OBS to do these streams. Whenever I'm doing a stream, that's what I've been using. But apparently there's other OBS software called Streamlabs OBS that apparently has more like social media integration and stuff like that. And so I need to consider switching to that. Maybe that's better. I don't know. Who knows? And I'm noticing also that these glasses have more glare than the other glasses. These are important things to note as you do a stream. I think very critical, very important things to note. Okay. So good morning. Good morning. How are you? I don't know what this is. This is an experiment. We'll see what happens. We'll see what comes out of this. If you all like it, then maybe I'll do these more often, because every morning I kind of get up to speed with everything that's happening in the entire world. And so maybe we share those. Maybe we talk about that. It is a pandemic after all, and people are all alone in their houses and underground in their basements, hiding out. And so maybe this is a way for all of us to come together and spend some quality time. Or maybe not. Maybe you hate this and maybe there's nothing to it. But here we are. So let's see what happens. I wanted to start today. I was reading some news, and one of the things that I saw actually came out from Apple today. They're talking about their update to what they're calling the App Store Small Business Program. So for the longest time, you've heard that Apple takes 30% commission from the apps that are in its store. And a lot of people had said, oh, that's unfair. And then there's special deals for certain companies and all of this other stuff. And it just winds up not being exactly fair, especially to the smaller developer, right? They've just got an app and they're putting it out there, and they're thrilled to get the app out to the whole world. They're thrilled to get it out to everybody who uses an iOS device, but Apple's then taking this 30% cut. Then maybe some people say that that's not the most fair thing in the entire world. So in order to, I guess, maybe make it more fair, this new program, it gives a commission down at only 15% for small businesses, which they define as if you earn up to $1 million a year. I've got to think that that's almost everybody in the App Store, right? Most developers with apps in the App Store are not making $1 million a year in sales. I think that's safe to say. Almost none of them are. I would think even a lot of the bigger companies aren't making $1 million a year. Think of the most successful app that's for sale in the App Store or that has in-app purchases in the App Store. Do you really think that they're making $1 million? How many apps are making $1 million? I'm going to say there's a few. There's a few. So this is almost, I have to think it's almost everybody that's doing this. Why would you not sign up for that? Anyway, it launches January 1st of 2021. So there's a couple months before you can get in on this. But I would think everybody's going to get in on that. And I have to say to Apple, it's about damn time, don't you think? It's about time that they did this. I think people have all been waiting for this for a very long time. And gosh, they've needed to do this. Apple also came out, and I didn't load this on the screen. I have a screen I'm going to show you in a second because it's technology here. We're just filled to the brim with technology in this space, in this room. This is like all the technology in the world. We've got a particle collider right over there. It's just off camera. We've got it all. And so one of the things that's interesting is that Apple came out with this podcast player. They now have a podcast player that will play any show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as we call it these days. And it's supposed to be a way for you to share, because I guess they wanted a way for you to share your podcasts out there. So they've given you a whole bunch of links and everything. But this player is so Spartan and so minimalistic. I'm just not sure how many people are going to use this. This is exactly the right kind of thing for Apple to be doing, in my opinion. In the podcast space, this is the right direction for them to be going in. But it's just so simple and basic, and I'm not sure that people will want to do that. But, it's tough because Apple has to strike that perfect balance between what everybody can use and like and features. So we'll see if people actually start using this thing, as opposed to what the player that's built in, the way Overcast shares it, or the built-in player for your host. As Fireside, we have a player that you can use. So I just don't know. I'm just not sure if what's going to happen here, but we'll have to see. So I asked people on Twitter before I started. I said, "Is there anything you want me to talk about? Do you have any questions? Have you anything that you want to know, whether it's for me or about the, because I have all the answers to the internet right here. They're all right here." So people have written in with some questions and things like that, and so I thought we could I could answer some of them as an experiment, as part of this interesting and bizarre experiment. And so right here in the chat, someone named Caudle says, "Fireside chats with Dan Benjamin would be a great way to start the day." If you agree, then tune in, and this is going to live on YouTube, of course. So I feel obligated to say the YouTube things that the YouTubers say, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. But I'm also going to be tweeting, and it's also streaming out to Periscope and Twitch. People are on Twitch, I guess, watching. Sure, wherever. I'll send this wherever people want to see it. But its home will be on YouTube. And now the real question is, do I also make this into a podcast? In other words, do I take the audio and deliver this as a podcast as well? I think so, but I need to gauge what y'all are doing. So tell me if you're watching live in Periscope or wherever else, chat and add a comment, because I'd like to see that. But of course, we don't know what this is yet, so it's going to change, right? It's going to be different, right? I've actually got a lot of on Quit on Friday of last week. I shared some thoughts that I had. I don't like to talk about politics, because I'm usually wrong, okay? And my opinions are strange. But I was explaining the deal with Trump and why he is currently contesting this. I'm not going to talk about that here. Don't worry. Don't turn it off. This is not a political show. We're not doing politics. But I've gotten so much feedback from that one comment that I made, because I had analyzed it. So another thing that's interesting to me is there seems to be a lot of confusion out there about things that, not just in politics, but news and tech and everything in general. I would love to try and tackle some of those questions. So if you ever, and it, again, not politics necessarily, but just understanding people, because I feel like I have a weird enough take that maybe it's interesting. And another thing I have to address here, every single day someone writes, and it's not always the same person, someone write in and say, "When are you going to do the UFO show?" I desperately want to do the UFO show, but I need a producer. I need some help with this, because there's so much happening in the UFO show space that it's just, I just can't possibly process all of those links and everything else on my own. There's just no way. So if you, I mean, I could rely on y'all to send in links, UFO links, but then I still got to sort. I need help with that, because there's so much else that's going on. So much Fireside stuff that's going on. So like one thing later today, I'll be on the Daily Tech News show with Tom Merritt, who does that show, who I've known for a long time. And I've been on the show before, and they were gracious enough to invite me back. I love doing that show. I would do that show anytime they want me to be on it. There's another show I'm going to be doing on Friday, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can talk about that or not. So, but today, Daily Tech News show, which I think it's at, I want to say it's at 3 Central, which is 4 Eastern, but I may be an hour off there. But they'll let me know. I'll just be sitting here like this, waiting until they say go. So from now until then, I'm just sitting, waiting. Okay. So let's get to some of these questions, because I think that's kind of interesting. It's interesting to talk about that. So I favorited some of these. Mike Stanley says, so many first questions are covered by Quit Podcast or Podcast Method. But here's one. Will we ever go back to watching movies in theaters in the same way, or will home release at a premium price like we've seen during COVID times become part of the mix? So, Mike, I think this is an excellent question, and it's something I've talked to some friends about. I'm good friends with a couple people in the movie industry, and I'm friends with somebody who's very specifically been like the marketing person for the Alamo, and the Alamo, if you don't know, is the best movie theater in the whole world. the best movie theater in the whole world. They're intensely concerned about quiet, and they make a wonderful movie experience. They have great food, so you can order all kinds of food. They bring it to your table while you sit there and watch. And this is something that I've loved doing for years. And my son and I would have a regular routine. At least once a month, if not twice a month, we would go and see a movie together and have a great lunch there. And it was like our Sunday afternoon thing. And Jeffrey Fedoras, hey, says AMC is teetering on bankruptcy. And this is true. The movie industry, how could it recover? Before I talk about the movie industry, though, let's take a step back and talk about spectator sports as well. I've always enjoyed watching the NFL, for example, despite the fact that players are so harmed by it. I have such a guilty conscience watching and enjoying football. It's like every time I enjoy football, I feel like I'm a terrible person because of how I know that players are being hurt. And maybe the brain injury thing. But if you take that and you combine the brain injury thing with the fact that no one can really be in the stands right now, and no one can, it's like, how do you even enjoy this game anymore? And will it ever come back? Ratings were already going down before COVID even happened. So how will the NFL or the MLB come back from this? People, the young people, are not as inspired. When I grew up, every weekend, every holiday, everything that was going on, there was always football on. If it was football season. If not, then there was baseball on. If not, it was basketball. And in between all of those as an undercurrent, golf, of course. And I think people still watch golf. And Tiger Woods really invigorated the feeling of golf and got a lot of people interested in it who wouldn't have otherwise been interested in it. But can something like the NFL ever come back? Will we ever have packed stadiums? Will we ever have incredible ratings? I remember as a kid when I didn't want to watch football, I would love watching something like The Simpsons, and it would always get delayed or pushed back. And I was like, sports, what are you doing? And I don't care about that game, even when I enjoyed football. It's just never going to come back. That's my take on it. And Falk says the Eagles aren't doing too well this year. They're not doing that well this year. We don't need to talk about the Eagles right now. There will be time to talk about the Eagles. It's not right now. I don't think spectator sports will ever be what they were. Now, soccer, or as the people in the UK say, soccer, that may come back because that has an international following to it that's very different, I think, from something like the NFL or even basketball. But how will these sports ever come back? The answer is they won't. The stadiums, I predict, will never. Now, you'll have the Super Bowl, yes. But these stadiums will never be packed again. They'll never get the same advertising dollars that they used to get. They'll never get any of that. It will be history. This is over. Sports as we know it, spectator sports as we know it, is over. So let's go back to the concept of movie theaters. I don't know if or when these will come back. Right now, the idea of going into an enclosed building with lots of other people sitting close to you, that, just like the idea of going to a restaurant and giving your friend a handshake or a hug when you see them, feels foreign and frightening to everybody right now. I think the idea of being in a movie theater feels even more frightening and concerning. And so I'm very pessimistic about it. Plus, everybody's been Netflix and chill. Everybody's streaming anyway, right? Everybody's been watching at home anyway. And in some cases, the experience of being at home is better. Now, like I was saying, I loved going to screw the regular movie theaters. Screw them all. They suck. The experience sucks. You watch 20 minutes of ads before the darn thing starts. Screw that. Forget that. Movie theaters, regular movie theaters, don't care about them. But specialty ones like Alamo, there's a wonderful experience. You go there, you order a fun meal, you sit back, the chairs are really comfortable, you've got a lot of space, they are very quiet. Anyone who talks gets kicked out. You're not allowed to have your phone on. It's like the ideal experience. It makes me sad to think that won't be around anymore because I'm telling you what, it's just not the same at home. There are so many movies that I saw in a theater, darkened theater, big screen, friends around you. I even got to see 2001. I took my son to see that. When it came back to the theaters, they had released a 4K master of it, and I got to see that, and it was an experience. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've seen 2001, a dozen times, dozens of times. Same thing with movies that are fun, like The Big Lebowski. You go in there, you're surrounded by friends and other people who are into it the same way that you are. I would hate to think that that shared experience that we've had since movie theaters began. I mean, even in the very earliest times, you had to go to a place to watch a moving picture. That was a thing. And it would be tragic to think that that experience of going out and doing it is lost. You know, there are so many predictions about the future, the dystopian future of everyone at home alone in their little silos interacting with the world over virtual reality. Well, that may be a little far-fetched or a little bit out in the future, but we're definitely, this kind of thing is definitely taking us in that direction, right? The idea that it's preferable to watch something on Netflix and text your friend about it rather than seeing it with them in person. I used to live across the street from a guy who was into football, and every Sunday, some of his friends would just show up, and I would wander over there and we'd just sit and watch a game. Even if we didn't talk that much, we might share some snacks, might make a comment. It was more fun to watch with people. And my son enjoys it. It's me and him watching it, but that's not the same thing. There is a shared experience that we miss when all we're doing is watching stuff streamed, you know, at home in our pajamas on our sofa at night. This is my 2 cents on that. Some people in the comments coming in. Caudle, am I saying that right? Caudill. I hope I'm saying that right. Says, I wonder if movies will go back to having intermissions like back in the 40s after the Snyder Cut being 4 hours long, the Avengers movies, etc. It just seems like the next step. I only know offhand of 2 movies. I know there's more, but there's only 2 that jump in my head that have an intermission. 2001 is one of them, and Gandhi having the idea of an intermission. But one of my favorite parts, I have seen musicals and operas and stuff, and I enjoy that kind of thing. I enjoy live performances. And the intermission is such a great fun part because that's your opportunity to go and talk to somebody. What do you think of what just happened? What do you think is going to happen? I'm going to go get a snack. Like, it's great. I love that idea. I support that. And Jeffrey in the chat says, same goes for live music. The days of being packed into a small club watching bands is gone, at least for a long while. Totally gone. Outdoor venues, I think, are the first thing that we'll see starting to come back. If they're not already back, we'll see some of that. But the idea of going to like a club where you can be 15 feet away from the performer, a comedy club, same thing. I don't go to a lot of those, but same thing. Mike in the chat room says, we've only seen movies at a dinner theater here in town since one opened. It ruined other theaters for me. Yeah, you're right. There is a very special experience. But all of these experiences are what's missing now. As being able to have I went to pick up some barbecue from Leroy and Lewis, highly recommended. They don't do ribs. That's my problem, is they don't do ribs. They do something amazing called beef cheeks. It's like the cheek of a cow, I'm guessing, but it's somewhere, it's better than brisket. It's amazing. Anyway, I was there, and they have a lot of outdoor seating, and there were a lot of people doing the thing where one person sits in one corner of the table and the other person sits down in the opposite corner of the table, and that's how you're social distancing. When you see people, I mean, it's better than nothing, but it still sucks, right? Caudle says, a sound of music and Gone with the Wind. 10 Commandments has an intermission. All of that is, they say which cheek? It's the face cheeks, not the other kind. That's good. That's good. Okay, so let's get to the next question over here. Yorn, I'm going to say Yorn, says, what tips do you have for absolutely rocking a hat like that? I think he's referring to, I wear a hat often. I have a few different ones. And the secret is not caring what other people think and ignoring what the hipsters did to wearing hats. Hipsters came. So I grew up. I wish I could call up the picture. I've got a great picture of me when I was a little boy. My grandfather always wore a hat, and I always loved it. And so he got me my first hat, and I started wearing it. I was a little boy wearing like a little fedora hat. It was adorable, I think. And I always enjoyed that. And so growing up, I would wear them. And of course, there was a long time where you just wore a baseball cap, but that's not really a hat. That's a purpose hat. But, when I started wearing fedoras, and I was wearing them for many years because they were just fun. They were just fun. And I know they're kind of silly. Who cares? I don't care. You have to not care. That's the secret. But then the hipster movement came, and what they started doing was they started wearing fedora hats that were way too small, and they wore them on the back of their head. For those of you who are watching on video, the back of their head pushed way back, which is not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to wear it. It's supposed to be like about an inch over your eyebrows, really. And they would wear them very small and way back, and it became like a thing. And in my opinion, the hipsters kind of ruined that, because then if you showed up with a hat, you're like, oh, and the worst thing you could be called would be an aging hipster. That's not nice. Don't call someone an aging hipster. And that's the category of people wearing these hats. Well, I love what's called a pork. I have one. It's right in the other room, but I would have to stop the stream to go get it. And you don't want that. But I have a pork pie hat that I wear anytime it's cool out. And I've even got one I wear in the summertime. That's like a straw version of it. And you have to cultivate the look. You have to really embrace it. You have to say, I'm going to do something that is a little bit different, and be okay with it. So Jorn, I hope I'm saying that right. That's my take on it. Okay, look at this. Steven says it would be interested in when you think we'll travel for pleasure again. Never. In a year, maybe, in the end of 2021, maybe. What we need in order to do any of these things. Now, travel is different than movie theaters, because movie theaters have a replacement. It's called Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or whoever else. There's a replacement there. There's a replacement for going to see spectator sports in person. And wait a minute. Let me think about this. Let me think about this for a second. How many people, including you, do you know that have gone to, I'll pick football, have gone to a professional NFL football game? And if they have, how many, including you, how many times have you done that in your life? There are some people I'm sure got season tickets or something, but I'm going to say most of you probably haven't been even once. Most of you haven't even been once. That's my theory. And if you have been once, then you've only been once, maybe twice. I've been to maybe 2 Eagles games in my life. And they were great, but that's not something that I'm going to do every year. It's not something I'm even going to do every 5 years. Movies, very different story, but traveling is something people do all the time, right? And Momo Badalak says, is the road trip back? Yes, that's how people are traveling. You're doing road trips, but people are scared to stay in hotels right now. But the answer is, as Matt says, I think once vaccines become ubiquitous, you'll be surprised how fast these things all come back. Not all of them, not the ones with replacements. Movie theaters will come back, but they'll never reach the level that they were. And movie theaters were running on a slim margin anyway. But concerts will come back for sure. But the answer is, once vaccines are everywhere, and once everybody has had the vaccine, or most people have either had the vaccine or had COVID, I think you'll start to see these things coming back. But traveling for pleasure, just like booking it, like, hey, let's fly to Los Angeles and spend a few days there. That's going to take a long, long time to come back, I think. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. The next question that's on here is Eric Beaver says, maybe thoughts on living in a liberal part of conservative Texas when polls said the state may turn blue this year. No haters allowed to send you an email about this one. I don't think that anyone who actually lives in Texas really thought that Texas is or would become a swing state. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. There are too many people here who are Republican for it to become a Democrat state. It's just not going to happen. I saw a friend of mine tweeted, and I won't call him out because out of respect, he said, Texas is a swing state. And he linked to some, it's not a swing state. It's just not going, it's just not going to be a swing state. Amos Chan says, probably not the right show for this, but I'd love to hear a build and analyze-esque conversation centered around Fireside. There are a lot of people who have asked me questions about Fireside, and let me know if that's something you want me to talk about here. I feel like that belongs somewhere else. I don't know where, but I think I would bore people to death if I talk too much about Fireside here, because I don't want this to be like maybe it needs to be a developer. I don't know. You're going to tell me what you want. You've got to tell me on Twitter or write in and tell me what what you want, because I'll do it. If everybody says talk about fireside, I mean, I will. But I just don't know if that's too boring or not. Some people had written in, and I said, are you working on something cool? Because I love to learn about what people are working on. I got a lot of people who wrote in saying that they wanted to share the things that they're working on. So I thought we could share some of those. Now, again, this is why I think this might work better as a YouTube, but if it's a podcast, you're going to just hear me talking about some of these things, because there were some pretty cool things that people wrote in about. And I basically just said, have you made something cool? What have you made? I want to talk about it. I want to hear what you're doing. So we'll do a few of those, I think, today. Magnus says, I made this and I think it's pretty cool. It's some kind of a calculator that helps with playing 18xx board games. Like, I don't even know what any of those things mean. But if that means something to you, this looks interesting. It's some kind of cool calculator. Like, that's cool. Like, there's so much stuff that you don't even think about that people are making right now. This guy here, Andrew, says, when the pandemic was at its height in April, I think it's at its height now, to be honest, I sat down and over a few days, I formalized my folder organization OCD and turned it into a relatively cool and inexpensive product I call typea. And so this is actually pretty cool. Here's a little, well, I've got to mute it here. Sorry, I can't play your audio through the thing because I don't have it set up for that. Color-coded, visually distinct folders that run and help you organize everything. This looks pretty cool. Look at that. Very nice. macOS icons with panache, it says. And so this is cool if you've got OCD and you want that, and they're updating it for Big Sur. That's kind of fun. That's kind of cool. I respect anyone who has some OCD things and turns it into a product. That's kind of fun. There's this other thing here that this one came in called Hey Check It. HeyCheckIt.com, which is all about accessibility, I guess. It determines website performance and things. This is kind of cool. But I want to know, like, what are you working on? What has COVID led you to do? We're all trapped, right? And there's so many of us that are spending either some or all of our time like alone thinking about things and like, what are we going to make and what are we going to do and how do we spend our time? It's just such a strange, bizarre time period right now. I like this one. Kate O'Brien says, I made a 20th anniversary dinner on a Coleman stove while camping with my husband. Does that count? Is that cool? And the answer is yes, it's very cool. And for those who are just listening to the audio of this, I'll describe it. It looks like a beautiful salmon fillet with some bread. It doesn't look quite like French bread. I'm not sure what kind of bread that is. A corn cob, a little slice of lemon, and some kind of little salad to go with it with beautiful arrangement of flowers. I think if I do this as a podcast, that'll have to be the show art for it. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I mean, there's so many things that you can do when you're stuck with COVID to better yourself. Like, better yourself in some way. This is what I talk about on Quit all the time, is like, if you have an extra hour in a day, don't just watch Netflix. Do something a little more interesting, a little more exciting about it. Robert Curry, friend of the show, says, I'd love to know more about Fireside from the perspective of how you make choices on what features to work on. Momo Badalak, I like that. I like that name. I'm sorry. What is the good, better, best of Fireside for you over the next year or two? And Caudle says a Fireside segment would be cool. Hearing about it on Back to Work has always been interesting. There's so much to talk about at Fireside. I'm very worried that it'll bore people. But, you know, when I started Fireside, it was because I felt like there was a serious lack of what I determined to be a really, really good user experience combined with really, really professional tools for podcasters. And I wanted to create that. And having spent now, I mean, I started podcasting I had a Shoutcast radio show in 2005, 4 and 5, that almost a dozen people heard. And then in 2006, when podcasts were kind of a thing, I started doing podcasting, and I thought, okay, this is great. And then Apple added support for it, and it became even more great. And so in 2008, I went full time, started 5x5 and did that. And then in about 2016, I launched Fireside as this platform that took everything that I had learned over the 10 years of, at the time, 10 years of doing it, and put my heart and soul into this to make it. And people seem to really like it, which is wonderful. And I spend a lot of time doing it. And so just continuing to make it better. And I have a lot of help from other people who have been on the team and are on the team who are helping me do it. But there's a lot to talk about there, and I'd be thrilled to talk about it. It's something that I think it's a passion for me as much. I'm actually trying not to code as much and do more focus on listening to people and what they want, and helping guide and direct features, working with Garrett, who's doing a lot of the more code recently. I enjoy coding, but it could be argued that maybe that's not the best use of my time. Maybe I'm better at doing things maybe like this, or helping drive Fireside from the business standpoint. I don't know. But having someone like Garrett, who's an amazing coder, Garrett Diamond, by the way, hey Garrett, on board and helping out has just been so amazing. And actually, where I'm hiring for Fireside, I need someone to come in and help out with support, but I also want that person to be able to help with 5x5 and do some of the production work for my shows. And part of me says hire from within the Fireside community. Find somebody who is a customer and already knows about Fireside and loves it. And we have a lot of customers who are like, love it. And tap one of those and say, hey, do you need a job? Do you want to help do support? But then the flip side is I really want someone, I know it's weird with COVID too. So maybe when COVID's over, or maybe if we're pretty isolated, maybe if they isolate, we could do, but having somebody here who can also do the 5x5 stuff and help with the production stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot more video stuff. I've actually got a couple ideas for shows. And the big thing that I'm working on, because I can't just do one thing ever, I guess, is I'm going to start working on some documentaries. This show will never air, but some documentary stuff. So I need someone who wants to be involved in the actual like physical work of doing that stuff, so yeah, I need someone in Austin who could do some of this stuff. So if you're in Austin, or you know somebody in Austin, Texas, make the introduction. I think it would be pretty cool. Why not ask y'all? Robert says, because of COVID, I need to teach online. So working on getting better at After Effects, video editing, audio. Even if most of my students don't watch the videos, I'm learning lots. I always love video editing. I use Adobe Premiere to edit like the YouTube videos that you see, the ones that are edited. And it's such a joy. It's so much fun. It's amazing what you can do with video editing software. And I'm mainly self-taught. I've taken a couple of classes, but I love video editing. But again, that's not what I should be doing. Like, this is the hard part for me. I like to code, but I shouldn't really be coding. I should be making content. I like to edit the videos, but I shouldn't be editing videos. I should be making the content in the videos and have a video editor. So if you're a video editor in Austin too, we should probably talk. Scott says, my journey started at the same time as Back to Work episode 1. Now I'm right on that edge. I mean, I love hearing this stuff. And it brings me so much joy to think that something that I'm made or I'm making or working on, people like it. Here's somebody who writes in, Ben Tolson, hope I'm saying that right, says, I wrote and filmed a silly music video for Padia about selling digital products and had a ton of fun making it. It's still one of the favorite projects I've ever done. And here's a really cool video. Speaking of videos, there's so much that people are doing out there right now, and it makes me so excited to see what people are doing. And man, it's such a crappy world, and yet people are finding these little pockets of space to create something really interesting. I just love it. So, I want to do more news, and I want to do more news stories. And I find a considerable amount of those things. But if you could send them to me, I need a good way to submit. I do. If I turn this into a podcast, which I feel like I should, right? It's going to be the Dan Benjamin Show, for lack of a unless you tell me what to call this. But I will tweet out where the links and notes and stuff are going to be, and I'm going to need you to send me links. I'm going to need you to send me topics that you want me to talk about, and you'll get credit for it. And so maybe here's the deal: if you ask a question or suggest a topic, this is just an idea right now. If you suggest a topic or ask a question, you get to promote the thing that you did. Oh, what do you think of that? I think that we're on to something there. So it's free promotion for you, because I'm not going to do sponsors, I don't think, on this. It's going to be listener supported. And so you can ask me a question, and if you ask it, I'll say the thing that you did, or I'll show it, or whatever. What do you think about it? I think yes. I say yes. We'll try it. This is all an experiment. And if you do want to support the work that I do, not just this show, but all of the shows, everything that I'm doing, the YouTube videos, all the stuff that I do, the best place to go, I think, is just patreon.com/Dan Benjamin. That's the best way, and I appreciate it. I used to say, and it's true, like, you're literally helping me pay my bills. People think that I'm sitting on top of a giant pile of cash, and that's I'm recording from my yacht. None of those things are true. So if you want to support the work that I do, I really do appreciate it. And if you don't want to give me money, I mean, shame on you, but that's okay. Like and subscribe and ring the bell and all of that stuff. So I feel like that's it. We've been going for 36 minutes. I don't know how long, what's the right amount of time? Is it 40 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 5 hours? These are the things that I don't know. But if you have questions, I feel like this is the place to ask anything that you want to know. Anything that you want to know, I will answer your question. Brian Newman asks, is this the Philly Special Rolex? Yes, this is the Philly Special Rolex. For those who don't know, I'll tell the story. I'm a watch nerd. Again, I can credit my granddad and he was a metallurgist, a scientist, an engineer. My uncle was an electrical engineer. And their love for engineering, to me, translated both into kind of software, but also into the love of watches. They both loved watches. My grandfather, his whole life, absolutely loved watches. And he kind of imbued that love of watches to me when I was a boy. He gave me a Bulova, really tiny by today's standards, probably like a 32 millimeter Bulova. It's super tiny. And that was like the watch that I wore all through high school and into college, and I loved it. And it was an automatic watch. And the idea that this little watch was like a living, breathing device, like a living thing that sits on your wrist. It was so cool. And it didn't need batteries. It wound itself. I couldn't believe it when he told me. He's like, oh, you don't have to wind this watch. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't have to wind it. He's like, yeah, you don't wind it. The movement, there's a little pendulum thing that spins inside the watch that winds the coil just from you moving throughout the day. It's enough to keep this going forever. And if you take care of it, you don't ever need to replace it. And he handed it down to me, and I'm handing it down to my son. My son has it now. Like, how cool is that? This same watch. Like, that's fascinating. So I love automatic watches. And of course, Rolex is the best. Rolex is the best of them. Some people would say, oh, Patek is better, whatever. For me, it's always been Rolex. I love Omega too. And I've had an Omega Seamaster. It was wonderful. But I had always wanted the Rolex Submariner, which is called a Rolex Sub. And I wanted one with a date. There are people who will say a Rolex Sub should not have a date. I'm the one that says it should have a date. Why? Because it can never remember what the date is. And so guess what? I'm already wearing something that's telling me the time. Let it tell me the date too. But these things are incredibly expensive, unreasonably expensive, well beyond my reach as something that I could buy. Because I don't want to take any money out of the pile of cash that I have. Because then it would be a little lower, and I want to fill the whole screen, and so I can't take any money out of this pile of cash that's beneath me. So how would I get the money for this? I didn't know. So law of attraction, secret, manifesting. So you start doing affirmations every day, and the affirmations are, I'm going to have a Rolex Submariner with date. I'm going to have it. Some people just repeat this in their mind. Some people write it down. Whether you like him or hate him, Scott Adams of Dilbert fame wrote a book where he talks a lot about this. And one of the things that he talks about is how he does his affirmations, and it's a common way that people do it. And basically, if you want to make something happen, there are 3 things that are required for it. 3 things. The first thing is you have to very clearly know the thing that you want. You have to have a very clear idea of what that thing is in as much detail as possible. The second thing that you need is you need to want it deeply with emotion. This matters. You have to really, really want it. It's not just, oh, I kind of want it. You have to really want it the way that you want that bowl of ice cream when you're a kid after dinner on Saturday nights. It's the only time my house is quiet is when my kids are eating ice cream. And then the third thing that's important is you need to have an expectation that it will happen and be real. You can't just want it. You can't feel the deep emotion of wanting it. You have to believe that it will happen. Some people say, well, act like it's already happened. Do you want to be a millionaire? Act like you already are. I don't think that's as much of a practical advice as people need. I think what they really need is to have the expectation that it's going to happen. For example, you're going to have dinner tonight, right? You're pretty confident about that, right? I think you are. I know I'm going to have dinner. I might have dinner at 6. It might be 6:30. It might be 7. I might scrounge around for some food and not even eat a proper dinner, but I'm going to have something that will be called dinner. I know this. That's a fact. You've got to know it like that. You've got to believe the thing like that. So I had to, well, I knew what I wanted, the Rolex. I wanted it really bad because I'd always wanted it my whole life. I just had to start expecting that it would happen, but I couldn't understand how I would be able to get this thing. How would I make this happen? How would I manifest? This is my manifesting pose. How would I manifest this into reality? Okay. A couple of years ago, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Yeah, that was a great day for me. I couldn't believe it. My whole family was looking at me after they won, and I had no reaction. I was just watching. I was just sitting there staring. And they're like, aren't you going to cheer? Aren't you excited? Don't you care? And I said, well, it doesn't feel real. And it took me till the next morning before it felt real to me because I'd waited my whole life for this, my whole life. Finally, the Eagles had won the Super Bowl. It was amazing. Okay. It set in. And that morning when I woke up, the play that they had used to win it was the Philly Special. Right? That's the name of their play. It's a trick play. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. They used this trick play. They won the Super Bowl. I want to commemorate it. I want to a t-shirt that says Philly Special. I'll make my own t-shirt then. So I reached out to a friend of mine, a local designer, Ryan Hamrick. Hey, Ryan, he'll never see this. And I said to him, I said, listen, the Eagles just won. He does hand lettering, amazing hand lettering, great guy. And I said, could you do a hand lettering that says Philly Special? And I found a copy of the play. You've seen a football play with the little X's and O's. I'm going to see if I can pull up a picture of that for y'all that I can show you. And so in the process of finding that out, I sent that to him and I said, could you redraw this? And, here's some pictures of the t-shirt actually. Look, people have stolen it and made posters. This is the other thing. You've done something good when there's a lot of copycats. Look at all these copies of the original shirt with horrible, horrible lettering here. They just took what we did. I've even been shown that it's painted on a billboard somewhere in Philadelphia. But this is what the original looked like if you're looking on YouTube. Anyway, I went to him and he did this amazing design, and I set up a Shopify store, and I registered phillyspecial.net, couldn't get the .com. And I posted, I hadn't made any shirts. I said, we'll take pre-orders and then we'll start making them. And however many come in, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. So I just put it up there and started taking orders. And the Shopify app does a little cha-ching sound every time you make a sale. So I heard one. I'm like, ooh, I've sold one. Cool. I thought if I sell 50, I'll be pop a bottle of champagne and toast it, and it'll be great. And I started hearing more little cha-chings, cha-ching, 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 all through the rest of the day. And it kept continuing and continuing. Look at all these ripoffs. Look at all these copies. We were the first one to do a shirt. And look at all these ripoffs of it. That's amazing. Because I stopped selling it after I'd sold all of them over the next week or two. Look at all these ripoffs of it. Here's the original. See if this, no, it's a 404. Someone's selling them on eBay? Okay. So anyway, I made these shirts and I started hearing the cha-ching until it got to the point where it was just cha-ching, 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 nonstop. I had to mute the phone. It turns out that somebody, because I was the first person to do this, a radio station in Philly started talking about the shirts. And that led to a couple different discussion boards for Eagles fans all around the country and the world talking about it. And it just started to pick up steam and pick up steam. I sold thousands of these shirts. I was planning on just having a local person do some of the screen printing. I had to switch over to my friend Joel Bush. She runs Amplifier. I had to get them to do it. I had to get them to do the fulfillment. I never even touched a shirt until my own order came in. It was like this big project. It was this huge thing that happened. And all of a sudden, I was making like, you don't make a lot of them. People think you make a ton of money on t-shirts. You make couple bucks a shirt, $2, $3 a shirt or whatever it was. I sold so many shirts that I had enough money in profit after all of the shirts were paid and shipped and all of that fulfillment was paid for and everything came back in. This is the weirdest thing, guys. This is so weird. I made exactly the amount of money with tax that I needed to get this watch. Exactly the right amount of number. I mean, like, is that coincidence? I don't know. It's weird. But it gets weirder. There's something even weirder. Okay, a little backstory. Rolex only can make a certain number of watches. They're only able to produce a certain number of watches. They can't make more physically because they're really, really good to their employees, and their employees are like the best in the watchmaking world. They have very specialized skills. It's very, very difficult to make these watches, and they only have a certain number of watches that they can make, and they take pre-orders for the watches, and they have many different regions. America is only one of the places they sell to, obviously, and they're in Switzerland. So these watches that have to be made, they're constrained just by default, just by nature. So these watches are only a certain number of them are meant to go to the United States. Well, enter the Apple Watch. Apple started selling the Apple Watch, and the side effect of this is that they actually started people who had never even considered getting a watch before. All of a sudden, they really were into watches, and that spilled over into, well, I kind of like this Apple Watch, but what's this whole mechanical? I never wore a watch before, but now I want one, and I want a nice one, and I want a Rolex. So all of a sudden there was a really dramatic increase in demand for automatic watches, especially Rolex watches, in no small part because of the Apple Watch, right? Pretty interesting. Rolex couldn't keep up. So there was a huge backlog of orders. Because before, a store, the Rolex authorized dealer in town, they might only sell 15 watches in a year, or maybe it's 10 watches a month. I don't know, but they weren't selling like crazy. All of a sudden now there's this backlog. So no one could get the Rolex watch. So even though now I had this amazing like gift of the money I needed to buy this watch, I couldn't get the watch. Okay, so here's the weird part. I'm manifesting it still manifesting it, right? Every morning. And I went into my Rolex authorized dealer, and I had been in there before. They knew the watch that I was looking for, and I would call and I would check, and I would say, do you have one? Have you gotten your shipment? She'd say, no, we haven't gotten our shipment. We haven't gotten anything. And this kept going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Then the Eagles win the Super Bowl. I get this money all of a sudden. People are happy with their t-shirts. And then the following week, I call them and I say, have you gotten the Rolex sub? And they're, instead of the usual, nope, sorry, there's a pause. And I was like, okay, what's she going to say? She says, we have one, but I don't think I can sell it to you. So start manifest. She's like, but maybe I can. And I said, okay, what's the story? And she says, well, it was meant to go to someone else, but they just said they don't want it. If you can get here within the next 30 minutes, it's yours. Guess where I was within 30 minutes? And I can't tell you because they made me promise not to say. It was a celebrity who had ordered the watch, and it was for their son's graduation present. But because of the backlog, they went to a different city in Austin, outside of Austin. I think they went to San Antonio or something, and found one in San Antonio just the day before and canceled this order and got that one because their son was graduating the night before. So they needed to give them that present and they couldn't wait. And this one came in just a day too late. So I got it. Okay. Weird, right? Who knows? So maybe there is something to this manifesting stuff. Scott Newton says, by the way, I can hear the compression. There, you're not hearing any compression at all. I don't have any effects on this. This is just my voice straight into the mic. So I'm not sure. Maybe you're hearing, maybe the streaming service is adding compression. Who knows? But I think with that story, we will wrap it up. I've got a lot of links that you all have sent, and I'll get to them. Maybe I'll do this every day. Do you want me to do it every day? Let me know. Just tweet me at Dan Benjamin and say, yes, do this. But I kind of need you to name it. Should be the Dan Benjamin Show, Dan Benjamin Morning, the Daily. I don't know what to call this. So I need your suggestions on that. But thanks so much for tuning in. I think that's all we're going to do today. We wound up at about 50 minutes. Maybe that's a little too long. I don't know. But I like the idea of doing this with y'all every morning, connecting with you and getting your feedback and all of that. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And if you like it, I'll be back tomorrow.